Hi, welcome back to the Mob Mentality Show. My name is Austin Chadwick, and co-host is Chris Lucian. And today we're very excited to have Joshua Aresty on the show, aka Schwa. And we got some great topics lined up, basically picking up a kind of online remote conversation and turning it into a kind of more analog discussion here about remote work communication patterns, mobbing versus pairing, voice coding, or whatever else Schwa is passionate about at the moment. But before we jump into those, can you give an introduction for yourself?
Sure, glad to. So my name is full name Joshua, but I go by Schwa these days. I am a staff software engineer at Kohl's. I've been programming, well, since I was a kid, so whole life pretty much. And I discovered pair programming about 12 years ago, I think, and found my and have went remote and have been pairing full time since. So I've been pairing for quite a while and recently found my way into mobbing kind of by accident. So yeah, happy to be here.
Nice, nice. Well, maybe that's a good segue into our first topic. What was your origin story with mobbing, and what did it lead into with remote work communication patterns?
Totally. Well, as I mentioned, I started pairing. So I can kind
Yes.
of start with that. Like I worked at Pivotal Labs. Well, I didn't work for Pivotal. I worked for Dell there, but I worked in the San Francisco office and I started out in person. uh, in in a team there where basically, well, the second team I was on there, half the team was remote. And I found myself commuting like an hour plus to get into the office to mostly put on headphones and work online. And this was pre-pandemic, and San Francisco is not cheap. So I thought, maybe I should see if I can move remote and just work from there. And I did. And so that started my remote pairing journey. And that's where I got really into understanding what is it, well, understanding how to work remotely. On that team was very easy because everyone was in the same time zone. But when took a job at another company, I learned that oftentimes when you work remotely, you work with people across time zones and there's more distractions. So if you're not used to, say, synchronously communicating like you do in your pairing, it can be it can feel really different. And so I've been since then trying to find and exploring ways to make pairing better. And this most recent experience on this team learned that mobbing is a really good solution to a lot of those problems. Um, it's easier to get people started, and you don't have to worry about time zones as much. And so that's we on my most recent team, we found that we were mobbing when we were not outside of the core pairing hours, and that just kind of gradually increased to where we ended up mobbing most of the time, and we found ways to make that work really well, better than I've ever seen pairing work. So that's nice, and I can get more into that if you want.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really interested in kind of what problems did you experience, and then like what were the subsequent solutions that were found? Yeah, I can see how changing the dynamic can offer, new possibilities, and people can make new suggestions and things like that. But yeah, what did you see as issues, and then how did the team solve that in that process?
Totally. So with pairing and time zones, so pairing is really good when you can pair full time. It's kind of at its best when you have almost like 7 or 8 hours a day pairing with one person. When if there's like a 2 hour time difference, I find usually I can adjust my lunchtime and make it work, but still there's at least an hour at the end of the day that's not overlapping. And I'm the kind of pair that when I'm not pairing, I like to go find someone else who's pairing and just join them rather than solo. So I think there are people who would prefer to work alone in that extra hour that you have. And so that's just kind of a style difference.
Yeah.
But that pattern over the team ended up solving the problem of not having someone to pair, right? And so that mobbing solves that problem very easily. It introduces a new problem, which is how do you make sure that everybody is paying attention, focused, engaged? And the typical solution to that is to swap the driver. But if it takes you a long time to bootstrap your whatever situation you have going on a particular machine, it's hard to do that really quickly. So I think you might do it every couple hours or, you know, a few times a day rather than doing it every few minutes. And that makes it harder for people to focus. So in our case, I forget who had the idea first, but we just said, well, what if we just swap the navigator? We're used to pairing anyway. So basically pairing is kind of our default. And so we chose to try that out. And what we did was Zoom has this mode called immersive mode. And it allows you to position people almost like in a virtual space. And some of those modes have only two seats. So you can put one person in one seat and one person in the other seat and have the host drag people into the second seat. And
Nice.
there's a built-in timer. So you can basically say every 10 minutes, just swap the navigator. And it makes the visual cue, it does wonders for people's ability to know when they're supposed to lean in or lean out. And um, and so I found that people naturally, without even being asked to, who were really would have dominated the conversation otherwise, were holding back when they were not supposed to be the navigator, giving space for people who might feel like they couldn't effectively navigate to try it out. And they could try it out in a space that was safe because they have support, right? There's people around that can answer questions if they get stuck. And so that did a really good job of if you're familiar with like the studies on psychological safety, it's all about sharing the space equally. It did a really good job of making sure that the whole team felt like they were contributing to every step of the way.
Love it, love it. Yeah, that's yeah, I am all for it's almost funny whenever I'm not using some sort of mob tool to help facilitate, um, how much facilitation it does quite subtly, like
Mm,
in an automated fashion almost, and not even almost, it does. Um, that makes the cues, the kind of social cues for equality of voice and things like that, quite natural and a little less like facilitator forced, you know?
hmm
And I really love this switching navigator pattern. And what's funny about it is it almost seems so obvious, but at least in my memory that I'm digging through right now, I can't recall it ever giving it a name, like a formal name or something like that. Even though when I think back, there are some cases where we have done it without calling it out, kind of like an anthropologist kind of way.
mm,
So one time is when full-time mobbing and uh, the network connectivity is bad to the kind of host mob station,
hmm
and so it is easier for like you said, in certain situations, just to switch the navigator. So we just naturally fell into that mode. Another mode was when we were mobbing with middle school students, is kind of like an event that we do once a year or something like that. Um, their development computer
mm.
is not suitable, right, for them to be a driver, even to use like the takeover tool in a remote like Zoom session or something like that. Like the computer is so slow that doing anything
Mm.
other than talking and watching is very difficult for their network and their computer, which has very small CPUs and all that kind of stuff. And so we would rotate the navigator, and it had a lot of the benefits you were talking about there. And so I was quite inspired by your story because it's like, oh yeah, that is a thing. Let's give that thing a name. And I guess if you were to give it a name, what would you don it? You know?
Hmm. Well, I think of it almost like it's like a mob pairing, mob pair rotation or
Yeah.
something like that.
Nice. Nice. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Rock on. Rock
it's
on.
uh, it's it's funny because um, when I went remote, so that this is part of my exploration of how do you make pairing better, and it feeds into mobbing because this actually dovetails with that too. But one of the things that you learn, that pairing is a skill.
Hmm.
It's something that is it's learned. People get really good at it, or they may not be so good at it. But one of the things that you physically cannot do, or physically, I don't know, physically is not the right word, but when you're remote, you can't observe another person pairing
Yeah.
because you're in a room. And so you never learn through that natural observation. And this allows you to do that. You can see people working together and learn how to pair better. And that
Mm.
improves the whole, I think.
Nice. Nice.
Um, I have I had another thing I wanted to share about the
Please. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So some other things that I ran into pairing is obviously the observation piece, right? You can't observe other people pairing. Normally, when you're in a pairing environment, you overhear people. You can chime in and speak up and get that, um, uh, or like learn from watching other people do it, which is really nice. Um, the um, shoot. Oh, I remember. The one of the things that I think you need to do, or there's a real challenge with pairing in remote environments specifically, is that people don't know how to find you very easily. And that matters because when you're in a remote environment, people want to get in touch with the person, so they send you a message on Slack. There's this whole
Mm.
focus in remote work on asynchronous communication. And that drove me crazy because when you're pairing, every every message that you get, every meeting that is scheduled on your calendar is an interruption. And when you schedule a meeting because you can't find the person that you need to talk to, that's a scheduled interruption for your future self. And sorry for that. And so that your future self may not be prepared for that discussion. And so it's actually not the it's not really a good use of time to schedule a lot of meetings and it's not good for pairing when you have a lot of Slack messages coming in. And so you need to find a way to make it so that you can be discovered. And mobbing is wonderful for that because you just have a room and you share that room and people find you and you don't really have to worry about it anymore. So mobbing is the one is one thing, one reason I think pairing took off when mobbing didn't in the early 2000s is because it was easier to solve for pairing than mobbing. Because mobbing, you need a physical space that fits the number of people, and remote work solves that problem. So
Yeah.
mobbing is actually better in remote, and that's something that I mean not better, but it's easier in remote than in
Mm.
person, and I think that's not true of pairing.
Yeah, I think something that we had started doing, and what we really like. So our organization uses Microsoft Teams, and in Teams they have the little camera icon where you can see a channel with people in the channel, and then you have the avatars of each person that's there, which is their company photo. And so you can kind of like at a glance see where everybody is and what they're doing at the time. Then you can just jump in and talk to those people. And so it makes it very organic. Uh, what I found is that, people outside of the software discipline that have to interact with our team, it's very hard for them to understand it, right? It's like very different. And so, it takes a little bit of training kind of our external stakeholders to be like, hey, rather than sending us a chat,
Mm.
just jump in here and say hi, and then we can talk about it there. Or rather than scheduling a meeting, those sorts of things. So that's been pretty good. And then, I think another way, like one of the things that we do that sounds a little bit different is like we'll have a machine that's essentially a server that's hosting, and then everybody AnyDesks into the same machine, so that the timer
Mm.
allows them to rotate. Um, and so what the side effect of that is that that whole team ended up getting a chat entity, and so it's like, this mob or that mob chatting to the product owner rather than this person or that person. So that was pretty interesting. So is there yeah, so when you're kind of going in between pairing and mobbing, is there anything in particular that causes you to choose one or the other at any particular time, or is it just kind of all defaulted to mobbing now, or uh, yeah.
Mm. It's a good question. I think so. I think it's sort of up to the team preference,
Mm,
and to some degree, it's a negotiation between the leadership and the team and whatnot. So the company that I'm working at now is full of people that used to work at Pivotal. There's a lot of former pivots, and so they have a very strong XP foundation. And XP is pretty opinionated, or it can be. So I think what I've seen work pretty well on teams here is to sort of pair, but then mob when your pair is gone for any reason.
yeah.
And so we typically will have a small mob, like three, and a pair on my current team. But we're split between West Coast and like Central mostly. So usually around 3 p.m. I end up mobbing with another group of engineers that are on the West Coast. And so that's kind of it's what works in the moment, really, at the moment.
Yeah, I think so. We were all co-located before COVID, and after COVID, we started hiring kind of all across the country. And so yeah, we all used to be time co-located, and then that spread over time zones was something very new for us. And so, but it then became very fluid and organic. Um, and so it sounds like you had that kind of going for you for a much longer period of time, and mobbing came in later. Um, and so, yeah, are there any other communication patterns or anything else that you can think of that kind of emerged from all of these things?
Yeah. Well, um, so for pairing and that discoverability problem, we've been relying on this thing called a random interrupt role. So every day, we have a bot in our Slack channel that picks a person at random. That person is the interrupt for the day, and whoever they're pairing with or mobbing with is part of that. And that means that they will go to or choose to, if they're in a mob, maybe they can leave on their own. But if they're pairing, they usually bring their pair to any meetings that they have and respond to any interruptions on Slack. And it frees up the rest of the team to focus more.
Hmm.
Mm.
And that is a it's less of an issue with mobbing, but it's definitely an issue when you are switching. Um,
Gotcha, gotcha. Yeah, that highlights something that I was going to ask about anyways. I recently I was familiar before with the concepts from this book called Digital Minimalism, but I recently read it in detail with my daughter, actually, because she's now, in the smartphone age, she's coming of age and all that kind of stuff. And it's talking about, high quality interactions, remote or in person, versus more interrupt driven async tasks.
mm,
That are advantageous for some things, but also can lead to a kind of fractured life in many ways. And so I see you kind of hitting on that topic. And in
Hmm.
the book, I was talking about kind of using async as kind of like a good logistical tool, but not as a good, like high bandwidth collaboration tool to really iron something out with somebody, right?
Yeah.
And so you started to share a little bit on how you will use the asynchronous. So chat, these chat channels, Slack or Teams or whatever, they
Hmm.
exist in companies, right? I doubt there's going to be like a team out there who can just go like delete. We don't do that.
Yeah.
So and I love that you assign someone as kind of like a mob role to be the person to be interrupted to handle these kind of things.
Hmm.
That's a really cool pattern. How often do they check? Are they like on call throughout the mob or pairs day? Or do they checking every so often? Yeah, how
Hmm.
does that kind of work?
It's a good question. I think so. It's really they're supposed to be checking pretty regularly. And so if they get something, get an interruption that is worth bringing to the attention of the mob or the pair, they will. Um, if they're pairing, they should always bring it to the attention of the other person because that would be a like basically it would mean that you're getting distracted. And so in my experience, it's usually better to respond to those things together than to have one person kind of typing on the side while the other is trying to move forward. Um, and we actually in mobbing when because we had that formal rotation of the navigator, it's pretty easy for the people in the back to be watching these things and responding as they feel comfortable. So it's the interrupt was really driven by needs when pairing, but it also is useful for mobbing just to know that you have somebody who's watching. It also gets people used to the idea of not DMing a specific person because that person changes every day. So it's kind of like an outbound social signal, which is nice.
Yeah, I think we have had instances where somebody became like the sole point of contact for the whole world on a project where they really only shared like a minor part of the responsibility, and so we had to go to great lengths to break that habit, and that I think made the team a lot healthier. So I really think that the outbound social signal on that is really, really important, however you end up doing it.
Yeah.
All right. Uh, yeah. So in in the work that you've been doing, do you is there a specific, I guess, s- like onboarding or anything for people that are like, how often do you get people that are new to bobbing versus pairing? Is it difficult to bring somebody into the process, or is it kind of just like the culture of the team?
Hmm.
Is that fractured at all, or is it more cohesive, and like how do you get people on board?
Well, that's an interesting question. So in the team I was on, where we were where when we absorbed a new person, we just sort of onboarded them pretty easily because we had a very consistent process. We would basically do three rotations and then take a break, and we did this for gosh, I think it was probably 6 months, maybe longer. We got to the point where we would even sometimes take breaks together and go for walks, even being remote, right? So you call up on Slack and walk down the street and just see what people could see, which is almost like taking four walks at once. It was kind of fun. Um, but in so since we actually had to break up the team because there was some other teams really needed support. And so we ended up half of my team joined another team. I went to another team altogether, and I'm getting visibility into the team that they joined to where this team was not necessarily doing so much pair rotation, which is something that you really have to do in a strong pairing team. And over time, I've seen that team change to where they're doing a lot more pair rotation and even mobbing. Um, and so it's fun to watch from the outside as kind of this culture that we started is starting to spread, and I'm not even part of that. So it's pretty nice to see.
Nice, nice. Well, that's some cool mob meiosis, maybe, or cell division.
Hmm.
That's pretty awesome. Um, yeah, so maybe we can pivot topics. I'm very curious what you mean by this voice coding here. Yeah, do you mind explaining?
Sure. So let's see. I guess it was maybe 2 years ago-ish. I stumbled across this thing called cursorless, which I don't know if you've heard of, but it's basically a toolkit for editing structural editing of code by voice, and it's built on top of this thing called Talon, which is a complete automation system, voice driven. And when I started playing with this, I had the realization that something about pairing when you're typing, it's hard for people to see what you're doing, especially remote. And so a lot of people solve that by sharing their keystrokes, but your voice is audible. And so if you actually are programming by voice, people hear what you're saying and see what you're doing. It reinforces the whole process. And so when I was mobbing and using this toolkit, people started to pick up on the language I was using, and they would even use it to communicate with each other sometimes. And so it's pretty cool. Like I was I've been able to use it when I repair up with these people, my coworkers and friends, to just like say, okay, I want you to type this and this, not a lot more, it's a lot more intelligible than, or a lot less ambiguous than the English language. So that's
I just
been
opened the
fun.
docs here, and so some of these things are really interesting. The example they give is the command chuck bat deletes the token with a hat over the B. In this command, the action is chuck delete, and the target is bat. Uh, so is that what you're talking about? It's kind of like that sort of language. Yeah,
Yes.
interesting,
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah, I've never heard of this before. This is pretty cool. Um, so so is that where the okay, so you had this tool installed on, and you were the driver, and so when somebody would navigate you, then you would start issuing voice commands to the
Yep.
computer to do that. Okay, I
Yep.
had to get this. So when you said cursorless initially, I was like, well, maybe he's talking about programming without cursor, like for not using AI to program, like, and
No.
so my mind went in a completely different direction. So this is
This
good. Uh,
this is my main keyboard.
oh, awesome. Yeah.
Wow.
So
Wow.
the left hand turns on and off Talon, and the right hand mutes me. So I can quickly mute when I if I'm talking over somebody.
Oh, okay.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, so I think it's almost kind of like you have a covert driver who you're issuing navigation to in a very specific language, and that covert driver, computerized driver, carries it out very specifically. Is that like a
Yeah.
paraphrase what's going on? Yeah.
Yeah, imagine if you had a keyboard with infinite keys, and every key
Okay.
could have a particular
Mm,
function. So you had a key to
okay.
input parentheses and put your cursor in the middle as an example.
Sure. Cool. Can you give me like a really specific example? So I'm like trying to imagine, like, so for example, in my mob, a fairly common instance is,
Hmm.
lines 5 through 10, we should extract that to a method,
Yep.
and name the method, I don't know, Bob's ice cream, just to say something
So
ridiculous. So how would you do that in your voice coding here?
if lines 5 through 10 represented like a conditional or something like that,
Sure.
I would say like take conditional peach wren or something like that. If I saw the peach wren would identify a token in that, and the conditional would select the whole block.
Okay.
If I wanted to operate on, and then I would say extract this, and that invokes the like VS Code extract um, thing
Yeah.
action, and I can basically map anything, like any action in VS Code I could do with cursorless. I can, but the what happens is if you do that enough, people start to talk in terms of conditions and statements um, and calls, and as opposed to trying to find their way to that, which is usually what I see happening when people aren't looking at the code structurally. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Yeah, and
Yeah.
maybe I'll oh, go ahead, Chris. Yeah, you
I was
first.
just gonna say targeting a class definition or a function or a like any control structure, for loop, if statement, rather than saying the line numbers it's on. Is that sort of the okay?
Yeah.
Gotcha. So it's more conceptual and less literal, so to speak. Yeah,
Yeah.
navigation. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, one follow-up question I had is um our style of mobbing often includes a shared mob station, kind of almost like back to in-person mobbing, but we're
Mm,
sharing it remotely via AnyDesk or TeamViewer or something like that.
mm,
So we will mob a whiteboard. We'll mob
mm.
an email response or something like that. We will mob anything a team would need to do. Oh, let's move Kanban card over, call it done, make new Kanban card. Is voice coding, so to speak, possible for non-coding? So you could, specify commands to open up whiteboard tool XYZ and draw three
Hmm.
boxes or something like that.
You can do that, yeah. Anything that you
Okay.
can do with the accessibility APIs on your computer. So it's cross-platform Mac, Windows, Linux, and you can do there's a lot of things you can do with it. I use it a lot actually to invoke ChatGPT. Um, so I'm kind of maintain my own little language for calling out to the API.
Wow, that's so cool. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'll
it's almost
definitely.
like go ahead. Yeah, yeah.
I was gonna say I'll definitely check it out. And uh, yeah, I just wanted to ask. Uh, have other people, while you've been mobbing, have other people adopted the tool on their own computer, or is it just something there the language has rubbed off on them?
More the language rubbing off.
Okay.
Some people have played with it, like tried to
Yeah.
use it. On a couple of occasions, I've played the my say speakers so that my microphone could hear them and people could try. Um, but just for fun. But it's cursorless is pretty well defined, but a lot of the stuff that I have written for myself um, is not super easy to learn. It's very customized.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it almost feels like it's you're almost developing your own language like Klingon or something like that to speak to the computer. And now other
Yeah.
humans are learning this language as well.
It's yeah, I maybe I didn't mention that part of the inspiration for this was I learned Japanese. I lived in Japan for 3 years and
Nice.
um and I've always found that speaking language is more natural for me than typing.
Hmm.
And so I think I just said, well, maybe I should try that for coding too, and it kind of works. So
Nice. Yeah, I'm gonna push Chris into the center of the dance circle here. He is very how many years have you spent learning Japanese, Chris?
I so on I have I don't know, almost 3,000 days on Duolingo in Japanese, but now I'm learning Japanese as a Spanish speaker, so I'm trying to keep both languages up. So
mm,
I I'm I'm doing the lessons from Spanish to Japanese now
Oh,
a lot.
wow.
So, uh, which is a nice little hack if you're trying to maintain three languages.
Mm,
And that's been pretty fun. But yeah, so I definitely haven't lived in Japan for a period of time, but I
mm,
have been able to go there and converse and stuff like that. So it's good stuff.
mm. That's awesome.
Nice. Yeah, and this maybe raises a meta question to get slightly philosophical. I almost feel like the software developer naturally finds themselves in a context to be a multilinguist in maybe 100 different ways to exaggerate. But
Mm,
you start to realize the meta concepts between 10 different programming languages
mm.
are roughly the same.
Oh, yeah.
And you start to draw parallels between learning Python as learning Spanish,
Hmm.
or learning
Mm,
ancient Greek, at least I'm just reflecting for myself.
mm,
And it's quite fun. It's quite a fun project, but also, um, yeah, because I think in some ways it's a disadvantage because I think almost like with your tool here, what is this cursor list?
mhm,
You get used to speaking or typing to a computer in a highly precise language, where a
mm,
human language is not precise often.
mm, mm.
And so sometimes I find myself speaking in a highly precise way to other humans, and they're like, "What planet are you from?"
Yeah.
Um,
I noticed that I'll do that with so if I've been working on an algorithm and concentrating really hard,
Mm,
I will generally have like less emotion
mm,
or outward emotion to other people in my life when I like get out of working and then or like working on that and until there's like a period of time where I have to uh maybe shift my brain to be less analytical.
mm.
Um I don't know. Do you have that experience at all, or does that sound weird?
No, it makes, I mean, when you're really focused, so like I find this very common when I'm working alone for a long period of time.
Right. Yeah.
I get very, I can come out of that almost like I'm waking up
Yeah.
from deep sleep and just you know, don't communicate that well. And but pairing and mobbing
Yeah.
kind of take that, or usually keep me a little bit more dynamic, and at least conversant in what other people need to need to know to understand and that kind of thing. So,
yeah, nice. Yeah, one thing I've struggled with recently, and I'm kind of curious on if you have any advice or if you struggled as well, is computer programming languages have no connotation, right? It's like uh, the syntax of, just pick something really simple, variable A equals 5. There's
mm,
no like meaning between the lines, right? Like it's like literal, right? Like
hmm,
quite
yeah.
literal. And so I found myself conditioned to treat English when I talk to other humans the same way and miss out that there's connotation
Mm,
into stating things literally, and so
yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if you have any advice for a Martian like me, but trying to speak English.
Oh my. Yeah, that's an interesting one. I think basically the advice I would give would be ask questions
Hmm.
when you say something. So just feedback in general is usually misunderstood,
Hmm.
and so you usually have to ask a question to understand it. Or if you can't ask another human the question, you can always ask ChatGPT, what are some different ways that you might hear this, and it will give you a lot of ideas.
Yeah. How can this email be misinterpreted in a negative way?
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll tell you.
Definitely will tell you that.
Nice.
So
Hmm.
yeah. So I guess is there anything else that we should cover? Mobbing, pairing, patterns,
Maybe
voice
I can
coding.
think I can think of one thing
Yeah.
that I'm pretty excited about, and and I don't hear enough about it, I think. Like a lot of the stuff I hear about LLMs, AI,
Yeah.
ChatGPT, um, it focuses on the the idea that AI is going to solve problems on behalf of people, technical problems, and do it in a way that relies less on people needing to be involved. And I that makes me sad as someone who loves social programming, because I think that people would think, or might naturally think, that you need less people. You don't need people to be working in teams. Um,
Right.
and but I think that solves for the wrong problem. I think it actually causes more friction in the end because when you integrate all of these changes, someone has to be responsible for making sure that they work together.
Yeah.
And more work going into the pipeline does not mean more work going to production. Um, where I think LLMs really have promise is actually helping teams interface with each other, helping people interface with each other, because it provides a neutral third party to any interaction. And I've used this mobbing to write documents in a way that would be really hard to do just as a group. You
Mhm.
ask ChatGPT, give me some questions to answer. Everybody answers the question, and then you ask ChatGPT to rewrite it. And that it just immediately solves that integration problem. And you can sort of extrapolate from there other kinds of use cases that would work really well.
Yeah. So I agree so lately I've been doing a lot of agentic based and that's why I bring up Cursor, but agentic based systems and programming that way. And when thinking about mobbing and with mobs that I've worked with, it's like, hey, that's an interesting thought. Let's go add that to the agent's context. And so what I found is that we end up mobbing the maintenance of the agent rather than diving too deeply into the code. And so I do think that collaboratively, it will simply shift to, what we will be typing in. But I don't know that there are always things that get misinterpreted by people and always things that need to shift and so you're not going to eliminate people from the technical equation at any point because you still need to interpret the desires of the human users of the systems that are being built. And so there will be humans in there somewhere, but I do think the landscape is changing. But what's really nice about that shared context is kind of, I think what you're getting at a little bit is that uh, everybody can put their ideas down and read through it and say like, yes, that is something that we can align on, and then the agent itself or whatever LLM that's using that context uh, can use it to guide its future decisions or whatever. So I find that interesting. I don't know, is that kind of what you're getting at, or is it slightly different?
Well, I mean that's certainly one use. Also, I think like for example, you take that Slack message that someone posted and you say, well, what are some different ways to interpret this? That makes it easier for you to understand what that person might have meant, why they asked that question without the color that you might naturally bring to reading that interaction. Because the ChatGPT doesn't have the same delusions that you do. And so therefore you can learn something about another perspective just by using it. And I think that is incredibly powerful.
Awesome. Well, we're getting a little bit to the end here. So I just wanted to ask, is there anything that you wanted to plug or share before we close the show?
I guess just I'm available on LinkedIn. You can connect with me, follow me, say hi. I'd love to meet people. So yeah.
All right, fantastic. To all of our listeners and viewers out there, do you know anybody who maybe is working in a remote environment and hasn't found the collaborative space yet? Maybe sharing this episode with them could help them on that journey. Or if there's anything that you want to talk about, I want to know how many people have heard of the voice coding idea before. That'd be really interesting if you want to talk with us in the comments. And so be sure to like, subscribe, ring the bell, and we'll see you all next time. And Schwa, thanks for joining us. It's been a great conversation. Bye, everybody.
Thanks. Bye.